This week, we welcome Jeff Costlow, Deputy CISO at ExtraHop, to discuss how to strengthen your cloud security posture. In the Leadership and Communications segment, why leaders should make decisions slowly, what Einstein's most famous equation says about maximizing your productivity, shift to digital business is booming, but are CEOs ignoring associated risks, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Security can't solve crucial problems when they have to wade through thousands of alerts a day. With ServiceNow, you can easily prioritize and respond to your most crucial business threats. That way you can go from overwhelmed to under control. ServiceNow brings security, risk, and IT together on one platform. Learn more at securityweekly.com/ServiceNow. These days, it's rarely a case of if you'll be hacked and more of a question of when. Once the attacker has passed your defenses, they cover their tracks and systematically infiltrate your network to steal information or shut your business down. You need to rethink the way security is delivered for your digitally transformed business. And there's one security solution that delivers it all, NetScout. Get visibility without borders for consistent detection, mitigation, and prevention across any network, data center, cloud, 5G, and more. Learn more at securityweekly.com/NetScout. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 145, recorded September 30th, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado. Joining me from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island are my co-hosts, Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Hey, Matt. It's great to be back here in G-Unit.
Yes. Are you not having cigars?
It's all good. It's all good.
Oh.
My voice is still recovering. Remember last week?
That's what I thought. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 weeks ago you were remote. Last week you were a little under the weather, so welcome back and
Thank you,
studio.
Matt. It's good to be back here.
It's always fun to be in studio. I'll be there tomorrow.
Yay.
Missed you by a day.
I know. Always. Sorry. We have exciting news about the Security Weekly podcast program. We are now partnered with ISC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attend any of our webcasts, you will be receiving 1 CPE credit per webcast. Register for one of our upcoming webcasts with SaltStack, Preempt, ServiceNow, or Core Security, or all of them, by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, including an awesome webcast with ExtraHop last week, you can find them in our on-demand library at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Also, Security Weekly will be at Hacker Halted in Atlanta, Georgia this October 10th and 11th. If you are attending and would like to sponsor an interview, please submit your interest on our conference request form at securityweekly.com/booking. EC Council is offering our listeners a free discount code to get into the conference. Use discount code HH19SW when you register, or go to securityweekly.com/hackerhalted and register there. All right, let's get to our guest. Jeff Costlow is a security technologist and leader with over 20 years of deep experience securing information and technology assets, as well as years of successful engineering leadership, delivering secure product deployments to thousands of customers. Jeff is the Deputy CISO at ExtraHop, leading the team towards groundbreaking security and privacy services. Jeff, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
We're going to talk cloud security a little bit. We had a great webcast with Tom Stitt last week, Paul and I, when I was in studio, talking about aspects of what I think we'll talk about today, but a little more slanted towards cloud security. But before we jump into kind of the specifics, give us a little more of your background. Kind of where have you been? How did you end up at ExtraHop? Your role at ExtraHop as deputy CISO.
Yeah, so my background is mostly engineering. I wrote code for many years. I started my career over 20 years ago at a Kerberos vendor, actually, before Windows 2000 integrated Kerberos in. And so we were doing Kerberos there. And ever since then, I've just been involved in security. I joined during the first internet boom. I joined a small startup. They do load balancers called F5. And we built up that business. And before I left there, I ran the security team there. So I consider myself a deep technologist in trying to involve technology in everything and understanding how technology affects security. And so I came over here and we were starting to build out some of our security functionality into the product and building out use cases. And that's when I decided that I wanted to, rather than write code, I wanted to get involved in how people use technology to solve their security problems.
It's interesting back in the day, talk about Kerberos. I mean, before we had all this fancy Active Directory stuff, when I worked at a lot of universities used to use Kerberos with LDAP, basically just rolled all the open source stuff together to create their university's directory service. And that was commonplace back in the day. So I don't know how common it is. Very
common, yeah.
I don't know how common it is today. A lot of schools have transitioned our discussion, right, have transitioned into the cloud, have transitioned into Active Directory, which is now transitioning into the cloud via Azure. So, but we still don't forget those granting tickets and all those Kerberos things that made our heads explode. At least my head exploded back in the day.
Yeah, Kerberos is an interesting protocol. I spent a lot of time working on it. It's beautiful in its simplicity, but it operates like a protocol designed in the 80s, and we've moved on since then. But it's still an interesting little protocol. I'm kind of a protocol guy, and that's one that still has a beautiful little place in my heart. I just really like the way it operates.
Agreed.
Yeah.
In speaking of protocols, I mean that's one of the things that ExtraHop does, right? When we think about monitoring network traffic and the things that you guys do, you're monitoring flow, you're monitoring protocols, you're pulling packets, you're actually pulling a lot of network traffic and information together to help customers kind of analyze it and make sense of where is malicious or abnormal behavior going on the network.
Yeah, exactly. We parse on the order of 60 protocols, and we pull a big number. We pull about 5,000 metrics about everything that's happening on your network. And we do that in real time. As the packets come in, we analyze them, put them in a database and keep track of all the metrics. And the really neat thing about that is we've been doing that. We built that 12 years ago. Since we've built up that metric store, a while ago we discovered machine learning works really well when you give it a good source of well-structured data. Turns out we had well-structured data about what's happening on your network. And so we started doing some machine learning and writing some machine learning algorithms. And eventually we got to the point where we could use our machine learning and some of the technologies that we developed. I don't want to turn it all about machine learning, but some of the technologies we developed to extract interesting information off the network to apply that to security use cases. And it's been real successful. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, ExtraHop's been going through this transition over the past couple of years of a network performance company now into really analyzing the network for security activity as well. And I think that's an interesting transition. We've seen a few others successfully do this. Splunk is a good use case of taking IT log data and then realizing that there's a really huge security use case around logs. You guys are kind of doing the same thing at the network layer.
Right, exactly. So that sort of leads to my kind of theory of how you can get information and where you should have analytics and data about what's happening on your network. Right, there's the SIEM, which most people have one of those. It's fairly well understood. It takes log data and it turns it into analytics. And then there's endpoint responses, right? Endpoint agents. So you've got all this information about the endpoint coming in. Seems to me like the least well-utilized portion of what you have is is the network, right? It is the ground truth. Anything that's on the network any attacker has to operate on the network. It's all there. The problem is extracting that information out. It's a ton of data, obviously, right? 100 gigabit networks are pretty standard these days. That's a lot of data, but understanding that data, what you need to be able to drill down and pull out just the analytics you want, and then drop the rest of the packets and continue on. Drop the rest of the packet, because a lot of it is not the content of the packet. It's about the metadata that's usually in the kind of the beginning portion of the packet, not always, but usually. And so you can extract that data, turn that into actionable information. That's the challenge that we're facing today.
For me, I think we used to and still do talk about understanding what's normal in your network. We're like, oh, well, we'll collect exactly from the 3 points you mentioned. We'll collect stuff from the network. We'll collect stuff from the endpoints. We'll collect stuff from the logs, and we'll put it in a system, and we'll figure out a baseline and look at what's normal, and then we'll just look at deviations. I think largely that theory is way more complex than it sounds. You know, as you said, kind of triggered that was you're looking at 5,000 different, scenarios, for lack of a better term, with machine learning to understand maybe not what's not normal, but what could potentially be an attack. And I think oftentimes those are two different things, because what we may have deemed as normal could be malicious in a different context. Right.
So probably one of the easiest ways to think about that, and I give this example sometimes, of those 5,000 metrics that we have, keeping track of all those seems kind of normal, and you never quite know what you're going to get out of it. And this one was surprising to me, and so I'll give this story. A few years ago, Mimikatz would always write its forged tickets or stolen tickets, however you want to phrase it, with RC4 encryption on it. That's moved on today, and this example is getting a little dated, but just merely detecting that a tool is using RC4 instead of AES, maybe we should take a look at that ticket. Maybe we should figure out what's happening with that Kerberos ticket. And that's, like I said, that's a dated example, but it's a good example of something that's just an easy something to pick out of the haystack and start doing some investigation on that. But you don't want to do that all the time. It could have been a really ancient host. And so we need to do a little bit of analysis on that. And we can tell if, for example, this client always uses AES to encrypt its tickets, and then all of a sudden it started using RC4. That's not correct, and we should probably do some investigation on that. So I think that's an example. It's a little dated, but that is an example of what we can extract.
Yeah, and I think having the context around what doesn't match normal is really, really where it's at, right? Knowing that it's not an older host, right, and having some context around that.
Yeah, being able to gain that context is super important. We've been adding some new features lately to try to figure out what OS is running, figure out whether they're a load balancer or the gateway or even a vulnerability scanner on your network. That matters, right? We don't want to go investigate everything our vulnerability scanner started creating. But on the other hand, we don't want somebody to change a user agent or something that says, "Oh, I'm Nessus, don't worry about me." We certainly don't want to have that. We want to know that you were a user agent, or you were a vulnerability scanner a long time ago, and you're still a vulnerability scanner, as opposed to a workstation, and all of a sudden lying about your user agent or lying about who you are.
Yeah, and now we're starting to see this move into the cloud, right? So part of this discussion is to talk about, how do you pull the network stuff out of the cloud, right? As we move our infrastructure off of our on-prem data centers into these different cloud environments, there have been, up until recently, a lot of limitations on how you pull that network traffic out. But both Microsoft and Amazon have made some announcements to be able to mirror some of that traffic and bring that also in to ExtraHop to also kind of correlate your hybrid environments as well.
Yeah, that's correct. As a security professional, I want to look at all of my data centers, all of the information that I have, right? I don't want to look at just one particular area. I want to apply the same tools everywhere so that we can do the same investigation. And I'm really excited about Microsoft kind of announced it first, but AWS has taken over. Microsoft calls it a VTAP. AWS calls it the VPC peering or mirroring. But the end result is we get all those packets from which we can extract useful information. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think part of that is the tool consolidation. The fact that we were launch partners with both of those is really good. We've been waiting for this sort of thing to come along. We knew that we could eventually get packets out of the cloud, but it just wasn't happening. And now that it's happening, it just feels like this could be a sea change or a big shift in the industry as to how to gain visibility into your packets and your network.
Yeah, we've gotten log data out of the cloud providers through some of the offerings that they've had. When it comes to endpoints, though, unless you're running your own dedicated endpoints, that one's going to be a little hard. So the ability to get packet data now actually is pretty interesting in certain scenarios where you may not have endpoint visibility to augment that lack of endpoint data that you can't get, and correlating that with some of the other log sources that the cloud providers are now making available.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm also a big fan of some of the new frameworks that are coming out. Not so new anymore, but try to get as much coverage as you can. And if you don't have logs in a certain area, or you don't have endpoint agents in a certain area, what can you fall back on? Well, network is the ground truth. You can certainly get that information from there. You may want to augment it with something else, but certainly you can at least start your investigation, start getting down into it, and understanding what's happening.
Yeah. When it comes to where do these three sources of data come together, log, endpoint, network data, is the SIEM still the place where this integration is trying to happen? Or are you guys bringing some of that data natively into ExtraHop to actually analyze the data and do some additional work there?
Yeah, we're spending some time looking around to see if we can figure out how to get some of the endpoint data and apply that in one pane of glass, so to speak. For the meantime, I think we're working on integrations. You can go to our website and look, but we've got some integrations with a lot of the endpoint vendors and a lot of the SIEMs to try to figure out how to be able to show all the information. If you start an investigation in your SIEM and you want to gain some more network information about what that particular device is doing on your network, pivot over into the ExtraHop, start getting some detail about that. Maybe you're going to want to go pivot into the endpoint detection response console and get some information from there. I think that we as security vendors and all the security vendors in the space need to be able to try to build those integrations and be able to make that easy to pivot from tool to tool and get as much information as you can to conduct your investigation.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, from the practitioner side, right? That's the struggle for our analysts, is they have so many point solutions they have to work with, so many different systems they have to jump into, so much noise coming at them on a day-to-day basis. So to hear the vendor say, number one, we want to eliminate noise with things like machine learning, right? And integrations with other systems, that's only going to help our analysts to respond quicker, right? And at the end of the day, detecting it isn't enough. We have to be able to get that quick response time. So hearing that you're pushing toward integrations with some of those top vendors is wonderful to hear from a CISO's perspective, who has analysts who work for my organization.
Right. Yeah. There's a reason why we switched away from calling it antivirus to detection and response. Right. Detection and response. We need to do both of those. So I'm a big proponent of that. I think that figuring out how to supply value there and work with other tools is really important. I do understand multiple panes of glass is sometimes not as nice as working on a single pane of glass, but as somebody pointed out, a dirty pane of glass isn't quite what you want either. You need to have clarity through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's the context, right? And by bringing all that information together, you can get a better picture of what's going on within the network.
Mm-hmm. Jason, so that brings me an interesting question, right? Yeah. From a carousel perspective, what does that optimal integration kind of look like a little bit? Is it a network alert data and endpoint alert data into your SIEM, and that's where alerting happens, which provides at least centralization for alerts, and then it's pivoting to the other platforms as you start an investigation and do a deeper dive into the forensics?
Yeah, I mean today SIEM is kind of that pane of glass everybody looks into to begin with, right? I mean, that's where everything begins, and then you kind of have to make your way outbound to all those other log sources. if you want to do a deeper dive. So yeah, I mean, we're still doing it the traditional way, where SIEM is kind of that alert mechanism, and then we have to jump into our endpoint management to take a look, or on the network side, jump into. I mean, we're a big Fortinet company, so FortiAnalyzer, and start doing detection there and start looking through those logs. But to be able to bring things together like we're talking about here, and have all that information kind of at your fingertips within, let's say, a click or two, that's nirvana for my team, right? They want to be able to, number one, get good information, have that information correlated, and then be able to jump very quickly between all of those log sources.
Yeah, and I think one of the big challenges is getting into some of that deep dive of the network traffic, because trying to analyze PCAPs or something like that it's not easy for some analysts, especially your junior analysts. I mean, understanding PCAP data gets a little rough.
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you go into Wireshark, you're going to get a lot of data, but you're going to spend 20 minutes or a half hour, when I'm pretty convinced that some of those metrics, those 5,000 metrics I mentioned earlier, many of those are going to answer some of the questions you want. You just want to be able to figure out whether this, maybe it had a certain user agent or something like that. Whatever little data piece you've got that you need to get to, often Wireshark is way too deep of a dive for somebody. And believe me, I speak of somebody who's used Wireshark a lot, and I'm not maligning Wireshark. I think it's an incredible tool. But from a detection and response standpoint, it's also a 20-minute job to do just about anything.
It's not efficient.
Yeah. So when you think about the value ExtraHop brings into the network and analyzing this data, where is some of that value versus using a Wireshark or just NetFlow data, right? Because you could use just your NetFlow data as well to get some of this information.
Oh, before we get there, this is the thought I have on that, because Chris Breton is amazing in putting this in context, and I want you to use this if you like it. So what Chris said is that all of the alerts or indicators are on a scale from 1 to 10, right? 1 to 3 are the easy ones. Most of us can spot those and go, yep, that's normal. 7 to 10 are the, oh my God, file a ticket, everyone's going to drop everything kind of thing. It's that everything from 4 to 6 that we spend our time on. We're in Wireshark analyzing stuff. Junior analysts are pulling data from different sources as well, trying to analyze it. And that's where we spend the time to determine if those things in the middle are something we need to pay attention to, or if they're normal. What I like about tools about ExtraHop, and I'll pay them a compliment, is they are one of the vendors that helps shrink that time you spend in the 4 to 6 range in Chris Brenton's scale of indicators of compromise.
Which is incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. My team is the threat research team, and we do all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that we've done is we've gone out of our way to kind of make a thumbs up or a thumbs down inside our GUI, so that you can look at it and you can say, oh, when I see these again, I'm definitely interested in seeing this particular class. Or there might be another class that that this is commonly issued by that, and you can thumbs down that. And then we'll take advantage of that in some of our machine learning to make sure that we give you just the alerts that you want. You can also suppress some alerts and things like that. But determining whether something is a 4 or a 6 or a 10 is response. That's what we need to get really good at.
Right. That's the name of the game right there.
Yep.
Yeah. And so obviously the analytics plays into that, the ability to capture that data. I think one of the other real values of ExtraHop is the ability to capture large network data volumes passively, not in line. The ability to get that network traffic pretty quickly and easily into your system is one of those other huge value plays for customers.
Yeah, I think as we spoke, or one of the features that we have that I'm really proud of is we have a 100 gigabit appliance that we can put in line. It's out of band, but we can put that in your data center and eat 100 gigabits worth of traffic. And I think that's kind of amazing in 2019 that we can get that amount of data extraction and analytics in it happens to be in 2U, but that's the way things are these days.
Yeah, and you can also handle encrypted traffic, which is the other big issue that a lot of organizations are facing as you see more and more encrypted traffic. How do you get that encrypted traffic without playing that man in the middle? You can also do that as well in your passive appliances as well.
Yeah, the appliance can eat. When we say 100 gigabits, that's actually 100 gigabits in the appliance, including encrypted traffic. So we can pick all that apart. So there's a couple different ways we do that. You can either lodge your RSA keys with us, and we'll put it in there, or we've got a special PFS secret agent. So PFS is perfect forward secrecy, the one that doesn't allow you to be a man in the middle in the conversation. So we've got a special agent that we can install that will send us the session keys, and then we can have decryption. The really nice thing is that it flows all the way through. So if we are doing packet capture and we've got the packets, we can deliver you what is essentially a PCAP-NG file that includes the key store in it, so that you can actually go in and see the encrypted traffic right there. If you've got permission to extract the packets, you'll get the session key along with it. It's really neat stuff. I'm really impressed with the way we can do that.
And then in the cloud, do you use a virtual appliance, or is it just an integration with their mirroring service? How does that work?
In the cloud, it's the same appliance that you would put on premises, except it's in the cloud, and it just runs there, and you don't get some of the fancy hardware offload of the encryption, but you can still eat as much traffic as you can get and push it into it. Same management rules apply. If you want to lodge your secret keys in there, you can do that, or you can install the secret agent and get the same session key. So it works exactly the same.
Got it.
Yep.
Same appliance, just different location.
Just different location. It's in the cloud. Yep.
Right. Paul, Jason, any additional questions for Jeff while we have him?
Yeah. So what's the value when you're going to the C-suite, right? So, this being Business Security Weekly, I have what I think would be like my sales pitch, but, Jeff, we want to hear it from you.
Yeah. So I would put that the value has to do with a quicker investigation. So, for example, one of the use cases that my team actually discovered was we had a Chrome extension. It was essentially masquerading as one of the ad blockers, and so it had a low and slow. It was constantly outputting the URLs that somebody was visiting. And if you've got poorly written apps inside the URL, you might have things like usernames or passwords or things like that being sent out. We were able to discover that. We were able to find that. We were able to shut it down. This was like December last year. It was about a year ago. I contacted the Google Play Store, and they took down an extension that was quite obviously exfiltrating. We found a couple more just like that. That's a separate problem discussing Chrome extensions. But being able to find things very quickly that are either low and slow or don't have the ability to be discovered any other way is our value proposition. Totally.
Yeah. So one of the things that our organization likes to look at is operational efficiency, right? So talk to me a little bit about ExtraHop and any level of operational efficiency it can bring to the SOC, like automations or anything of that nature.
Integrations too.
Yeah, integrations too. Yeah.
Yeah, integration. So again, also a big proponent of integrations. I think I'm actually really excited about some of the new SOAR stuff that's coming out right now. Since we are an out-of-band appliance, we're not in line for every single packet. We don't have the ability to stop packets. But what we do have is a standard API. And so we've already built a couple of integrations with a couple of the SOAR vendors. And so we've got the ability to integrate in with whatever workflow. Now, what I usually say here is I've been around for a long time. 20 years ago, we were talking about blocking things, shoving things over onto a VLAN, or just doing something to stop the traffic. My problem with this is, in order to have a really good automated workflow, you need to have confidence. You need to have, first of all, confidence that the diagnosis is correct, and second of all, confidence that the action that you're taking is also correct. The use case 20 years ago was, well, the CEO never logs into his laptop, and the night before the earnings call, he logged into his laptop, and so we didn't trust it, so we shut that laptop down, right? That story has been around for a really long time. It's probably cartoony at this point, but nonetheless, having confidence that the diagnosis that you had is the correct one, and the confidence that the action that you're taking is not going to cause you essentially be a career limiting move in this case. Those are the two things you need to build up. And I have a lot of confidence in our diagnosis ability that you can build that into a workflow and understand what you're doing. And you've still got to build those workflows. I don't think that there's many vendors who are going to immediately pop you the correct workflow in every single case, but confidence in the diagnosis is what's going to get you there in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, because I mean, CISOs today are fighting the good fight to get that seat at the table and show that we're business enablers, right? And the last thing we want to do is shut down the business because of one of these exercises, because of a false positive.
What I like and what I've heard, and we did the webcast and we've been working with ExtraHop, is that I think it's really like three things. It enables junior analysts to do more on your team.
Absolutely.
And be more effective.
Maximize the resources.
For senior analysts, it takes that time you're spending in that 4 to 6 and reduces it way down. Yeah. And it's improving the operational efficiency of your other tools. Yeah. Those are the kind of like three things we look for in solutions that we
100%.
That we recommend.
I mean, at the end of the day,
that's how you sell it to management.
We have to keep the lights on in the run, right?
Yeah.
And the limited amount of resources that we have on our security teams these days, I want them focusing on growth and transformation of our organization.
Yes.
And I want to pop as much of that run out of band as I possibly can. So having solutions like this is going to help me do that, right? It's gonna give me some level of automation, or a solution to take that run off the table, to keep the lights on, the daily activities off the table as much as I possibly can. So I have these folks focusing on enabling the business.
Yep.
Absolutely. Tier 2 analyst promoted automatically to tier 3 analysts, or however you want to describe that, is an efficiency play, huge efficiency play.
Agreed.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And adding all the network context into the rest of the data, definitely needed to make sure we're building that confidence in our detections.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
If anyone wants to learn more about ExtraHop, cloud security, or get a demo of ExtraHop or VLX, please visit securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. We'll take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.